Today we've got the future Flash living out some really emo moments, and Arrow kind of hinting at the last season's most detrimental ship being literally blown up. That's fucking hilarious. Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, my name's Splice Knight. Welcome back to Reflections, and today on Reflections we will be as quickly as possible because I realized last episode was long as fuck. If you guys haven't seen it, it's SAO. It's not necessarily everybody who comes for the Arrow videos cup of tea, but if you guys are interested in anime as well, as I am, then definitely check it out. Other than that, guys, let's get right into the content that we're talking about today. Okay, so the newest episodes of Flash and Arrow have been kind of interesting. For Flash, I got really excited because we got to finally see future Flash. And, weirdly enough, no blue lightning like there would be in the comics. So, maybe he just hasn't gotten to the point in the story where his grief actually puts him in a position where he would inherit the blue lightning from his experience with the Speed Force. Now, granted, I still don't think that Savitar is Barry, but it's always fun to theorize. So we had a ton of interesting reveals this week on The Flash, where he finally goes to the future. Now, let's talk about the significant points and try to make them bite-sized, because as I said before, I don't want to make this a 22-minute video. Basically, Barry of the future, who doesn't wear the suit until, like, the very last couple of, like, 15 minutes of their portion of the episode.
Give it to me.
Or probably, actually less, I guess. Maybe 10 minutes in. 15 minutes into actually the future.
Thought it was about time I did something.
He essentially in the future has let everybody wander from him, and the villains of the past have essentially taken over Flash's city. They now run it. And also, Killer Frost is kicking ass and looking good. Like, I don't know what it is. I love me a villainess who's not afraid to just not pull punches. I've always found that really interesting, especially since they get a sense of being a whole lot more dangerous. Examples of that being Shiko. Now, moving on to the meat of the episode, where we're in the future, where the principal problem, as I stated before, Barry's essentially let things slip. This whole episode was helping the future to move on and not stay rooted in cynicism, which overall ended up being a really good episode with some really cool visuals. A beautiful new suit, though to be honest, I was a little disappointed that it felt like Barry was always trying to literally run from his problems. Anyone else annoyed by that? I mean, like, seriously, he kept trying to run away every time he didn't get a decent answer from Barry of the future. And it's like, why don't you just investigate further and, you know, try and bring this Flash out of its funk? Also, on top of this, literally, part of the reason he can't get back to the past when he initially doesn't get any real traction is the fact that Cisco has developed a device that disrupts the Speed Force in speedsters and doesn't allow him to travel to the past. Why the fuck didn't he bring that to the past so he could fuck with Savitar? And I realize I'm saying the F word a lot. I'm sorry. It's not a kid's show, kids. So, when we finally get back to the present of 2017, we realize that, as is noted, Killer Frost has kind of fucked with shit, and she's actually going to work with Savitar. However, we get the actual reveal of who Savitar is through Caitlin. A lot of people are saying that it's Ronnie. Ronnie Raymond, if you guys don't remember, was originally Firestorm. He did show up in a flashback when Barry went into the Speed Force. It was essentially a flashback because the Speed Force essentially embodied people that Barry has had to deal with in the past. Now that said, I think it's really interesting that they brought that into it, because here's how I think he would realistically be able to plausibly make sense as being Savitar. And the way that this would happen, I think, if they were to explain it, would be that in the end of Season 1, where this huge rift is opened up, which was originally how they got Earth 2 involved and all that fun stuff, for season 2, they would have had to say something to the fact that Firestorm, which is 2 people in one, Dr. Stein and Ronnie Raymond to begin with, when they go to deal with that with Flash, only Dr. Stein ever comes out. Ronnie Raymond disappears. Now what we could say is that he ended up either in the Speed Force, which I don't think will happen. If they do explain it, that's kind of dumb. But what they could say is that he went and somehow ended up in the past of One Earth, or in a timeline where the past would have existed. And what that would have done is allowed him to actually live the backstory of Savitar, because we're not given an actual name of Savitar in the comics, like an actual identifiable name, but he could end up as a Cold War pilot. And yes, I'm correcting from my previous Savitar theory where I said he was a World War II pilot. He's actually a Cold War pilot. And we could say that this is how Ronnie essentially gets into that situation. He becomes lost in that time period, ends up flying through everything and getting his abilities, developing the cult of Savitar, and going through everything that way. Now, I think it'd be a really interesting way to bring Max Mercury, who would have fought him to begin with. I think it'd be a really cool way to try and bring Max into the narrative of the current Flash universe, kind of as someone who has to fight against him. And if that is what happens, I think it would just be beautiful from a writing perspective to do that. Now that said, I think it would be contrived to say that he somehow ended up in the Speed Force or something. So there are issues with the Ronnie is Savitar theory, but we'll see what happens in future episodes. Now, for right now, that is all I really have to say on that. Hopefully we'll get to see something further involving or explaining who Savitar is. They were saying next episode will be, so if it's already known, let me know if I was right down in the comment section down below. Okay, so as for Arrow in this particular new episode that just got released, we saw a few cool things. Mainly that Prometheus is a smart dude and he's able to get away from Argus, the Navy, Special Ops, all these crazy fucking organizations and shit. And he's clearly just predicting everything that Team Flash, or shit. And he's clearly predicting everything that Team Arrow wants to do and thinks of doing. So he's totally in the win. There's no way they're going to catch him. Until, of course, Felicity comes up with this get out of jail free card plot-wise to suddenly find where Prometheus would be. It's interesting, it definitely moves the Prometheus narrative ahead and keeps that relatively woven in. Right now, what they did in this episode was essentially Felicity was going full dark. Her full sort of dark end of her narrative has essentially reached its peak in that Helios kicks her out. Now, whether or not this actually puts her on a darker path of I have to do what's necessary for the good of the cause kind of a thing, it'll be interesting if that's what that puts her onto, or whether or not she decides to come back to the light side again and, you know, essentially become the good Felicity that we knew. Now, they were hinting a lot of kind of Olicity-ish moments, but I found it really interesting because finally, in this episode, Felicity had a reason to be superior to Oliver, was actually backsassing Oliver as well as Lila and other people. And she actually had a decent reason for it. Like, my main flaw with Season 4, I found, was that the reason that Olicity had so many issues, a lot of times they were fighting, and Felicity just never had a decent motivation for why she was angry. It was literally just for the sake of some bullshit plot point that made no sense. So now we've actually got something that's relevant to the actual overall plot that keeps the Arrow integrated and moving in a direction, but also has her being angry for the Arrow supporting something that is considered very inhumane. Keeping someone without a trial is fucked up. And most people do kind of say, hey, we want a little bit of due process and fair trial, which is something that Diggle brings up against Lila in this episode, so that was really beautifully done. I did find, though, that the fight scenes were kind of poorly done, but hey, you know, everybody's got to have a weak point, and I think that was definitely this episode's weak point, was the fight scenes felt a little weird. I don't know if that was just me, and I'm used to Prometheus versus Oliver this season, which was just beautiful fight scenes for the most part, well done, well choreographed, well executed. and we're kind of seeing where the budget kind of started to fall off for the Felicity episode. I don't know. At the end of the episode, after everything that's gone on, they've had this whole issue and debate. They find out that Prometheus is in the Arrow Cave, or the Quiver, if you want to use Harley Quinn's version of the name of the place where they hang out and chill. And he blows up not only Olicity, but their whole network of computers. So it'll hopefully make things a little harder. They might even go back to basics. Who knows where they're going to go with that. But the interesting thing is that they literally blew up Olicity, which I think is just fucking hilarious. Might even be a little bit of fan service for the fans, but we'll see. There have been talk about Olicity coming back strong in some upcoming trailers, so hopefully that doesn't happen, but we'll see. Also, if you're an Olicity fan, I'm sorry, but I just don't find it to be well executed, except in this episode. So, with that said, guys, thank you so much for watching. That is this episode. If you guys have any thoughts on it, let me know in the comments down below. If you have a suggestion for another episode of Reflections, also let me know in the description down below. And that is pretty much all I have to say. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, subscribe, or if you don't want to subscribe and you just want to continue watching my content, there's all kinds of videos that you can check on the sidebar here, one there and one there, where we will be talking about either further awesome crazy theories that'll make you mind-meltingly confused, or it'll make you think of characters from an anime perspective in a whole nother way. Also, spoiler, next week the Reflections will be anime related. I'm thinking of doing Gate and kind of talking about how that portrays enemies in a very interesting way. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Splice Night out.